The clock ticked past 3 a.m. An owl hooted in the distance. It was the hour when the veil between worlds thinned, the hour when nightmares crawled into reality. A lone streetlight flickered, casting long, dancing shadows. The street was deserted, houses dark, everyone asleep, except for 12-year-old Danny, who lay awake in his bed, listening to the strange noises coming from downstairs. The floorboards creaked. A door slammed shut. Danny's blood ran cold. He knew something was terribly wrong. He crept out of bed and tiptoed towards his bedroom door, his heart pounding in his chest. Peeking through the crack in his door, Danny saw his father standing in the hallway. But something was off. His father's eyes glowed with an eerie, unnatural light. And his smile, it was too wide, too sharp. "Dad?" Danny whispered, his voice trembling. "Danny, why are you awake?" his father hissed, his voice raspy and unfamiliar. Terror seized Danny. This wasn't his father, it was something else. Something evil had taken his father's form, something monstrous. The next morning, the police arrived. Danny's parents were gone, vanished without a trace. Danny tried to tell the police about the creature he'd seen, the thing wearing his father's skin, but they didn't believe him. They thought he was traumatized, confused. Days turned into weeks. More disappearances followed. Each time a loved one returned, acting strangely, their eyes glowing with that same eerie light, before they too vanished into the night. The town was in an uproar. Fear and suspicion ran rampant. Neighbors turned against neighbors, friends against friends, each accusing the other of being the monster in disguise. One fateful night, Emily, Danny's best friend, saw her own mother acting strangely. Emily, remembering Danny's story, decided to investigate. She snuck into her mother's room and found a hidden compartment in her closet. Inside, she discovered a grotesque mask, a perfect replica of her mother's face. Emily gasped. This was no ordinary mask. It was the face of the monster, the creature that had been terrorizing their town. And it meant that her real mother was gone, replaced by this horrifying imposter. Emily rushed to Danny, her heart pounding. They had to act fast. They knew the monster was powerful, but they also knew its weakness, sunlight. If they could expose it to the rays of dawn, they could destroy it. The clock was ticking. They only had a few hours until sunrise. They gathered a small group of trusted friends, the ones who still believed Danny's story, and armed themselves with whatever they could find: baseball bats, kitchen knives, a rusty old shotgun. They knew the risks, but they were determined to save their town and avenge their loved ones. Following a trail of clues, the children found themselves at the entrance of the abandoned mine on the outskirts of town. The air grew heavy, thick with a foul stench. The wind whispered through the crumbling timbers like the moans of the forgotten souls trapped within. Danny felt a shiver run down his spine. He knew, deep in his gut, that the monster was lurking below in the dark and twisting tunnels of the mine. Holding their breaths, the children descended into the darkness, each step taking them closer to the heart of the nightmare. The air inside the mine was thick with dust, making it difficult to breathe. Every step they took stirred up more particles, creating a haze that obscured their vision. The oppressive atmosphere weighed heavily on their shoulders, adding to the sense of dread that permeated the underground labyrinth, and the smell of decay. Cobwebs clung to their faces as they navigated the narrow tunnels, their progress slow and cautious. Each twist and turn of the passageways seemed to lead them deeper into the bowels of the earth, further away from the safety of the surface. The walls were damp and cold to the touch, a stark reminder of the isolation they faced, the only light coming from their flickering flashlights. The silence was broken only by the sound of their own breathing echoing off the stone walls. Occasionally, the distant rumble of shifting earth would send a shiver down their spines, a reminder of the mine's instability. They moved in single file, each person relying on the one in front to guide them through the darkness and the dripping of water. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the mine, freezing them in their tracks. Hearts pounding, they rounded a corner and came face to face with the monster. The sight was more horrifying than they could have imagined, a grotesque amalgamation of nightmares brought to life. It was a grotesque sight, its skin pale and slimy, glistening in the dim light. The creature's form was twisted and unnatural, as if it had been pieced together from the remnants of other beings. Its presence exuded a malevolent energy that seemed to sap the strength from their limbs, its eyes glowing red in the darkness, piercing through the gloom with an eerie intensity. It wore the face of Emily's mother, a cruel mockery that twisted the knife of fear even deeper. The resemblance was uncanny, yet the malevolence in its gaze betrayed its true nature. But the mask couldn't hide the creature's true nature. It was a predator, and they were its prey. The realization hit them like a physical blow, and they knew that their only chance of survival was to confront the horror head-on. Desperation fueled their resolve as they prepared to face the nightmare that awaited them in the depths of the mine. The monster lunged at them, its claws bared, eyes glowing with a malevolent light. The air was thick with tension, every breath a struggle as the creature's growls echoed through the dark, damp mine. It was a scene straight out of their worst nightmares. But this was no dream. This was their reality, and they had to face it head-on. Danny and his friends scattered, their hearts pounding like war drums in their chests. The darkness seemed to close in around them, every shadow a potential threat. They could hear each other's frantic breaths, the sound of their feet slapping against the cold, hard ground. Panic threatened to overtake them, but they knew they had to stay focused. They had to survive. They were outmatched, outgunned, but they refused to give up. Each of them grabbed whatever they could find, sticks, rocks, anything that could be used as a weapon. Their makeshift arsenal was pitiful compared to the monster's sheer power, but their determination was unyielding. They had faced challenges before, but nothing like this. This was a test of their courage, their friendship, and their will to survive. They had come too far to turn back now. Every step they had taken, every obstacle they had overcome, had led them to this moment. They could feel the weight of their journey pressing down on them, but it also gave them strength. They were not just fighting for their lives, they were fighting for each other, for the bond that had brought them together and kept them going. They fought back with everything they had, using their makeshift weapons, their courage, their only shield. Each swing, each strike was fueled by a desperate hope. The monster was relentless, its attacks brutal and unforgiving. But the kids were relentless too. They dodged, they struck, they defended each other with a ferocity that surprised even themselves. They were fighting not just for survival, but for the hope of a future beyond this nightmare. Emily, with a burst of adrenaline, managed to knock the mask off the monster's face, revealing the hideous creature beneath. Its true form was even more terrifying than they had imagined, a grotesque visage that seemed to embody pure evil, but the revelation also gave them a glimmer of hope. The monster was not invincible. It could be hurt. It could be defeated. It roared in anger, its true form exposed. The sound was deafening, a primal scream that shook the very walls of the mine. But the kids stood their ground. They had seen the monster's face, and they knew they had the strength to fight it. The roar was a challenge, and they were ready to meet it head-on. The battle raged, a desperate struggle for survival. Every second felt like an eternity, every movement a test of their endurance. The kids fought with everything they had, their bodies aching, their minds focused on one goal: to defeat the monster and make it out alive. The mine was a battleground, and they were warriors, fighting for their lives and their future. Just when all hope seemed lost, the first rays of dawn pierced through a crack in the ceiling, bathing the monster in a blinding light. The light was like a beacon of hope, cutting through the darkness and giving the kids the strength they needed to keep fighting. The monster recoiled, its power waning in the face of the dawn. It was a sign that their struggle was not in vain, that they had a chance to overcome the darkness and emerge victorious. The monster shrieked in agony as the sunlight touched its skin. Its hideous form, once a symbol of terror, now seemed vulnerable and weak under the bright rays of the sun. The children watched in a mix of horror and relief, their hearts pounding in their chests. It writhed and convulsed, its body dissolving into dust before their very eyes. The once formidable creature was now nothing more than a pile of ash scattered by the gentle breeze. The children could hardly believe their eyes. The nightmare was finally over. The mine shook as if the very earth was sighing in relief. The tremors reverberated through the ground, signaling the end of the terror that had gripped the town. It was as if nature itself was celebrating the defeat of the monstrous entity. As the dust settled, the children emerged from the mine, blinking in the sunlight. Their eyes, accustomed to the darkness, took a moment to adjust to the brightness. They looked around, taking in the sight of the world they had fought so hard to return to. They were battered and bruised, but alive. Each child bore the marks of their ordeal, yet their spirits were unbroken. They had faced unimaginable horrors and had come out on the other side, stronger and more resilient. They had faced their fears and emerged victorious. The sense of triumph was palpable, a testament to their courage and determination. They had not only survived, but had also conquered the darkness that had threatened to consume them. But as they looked at each other, a chilling thought occurred to them. The victory, though sweet, was not without its lingering fears. They realized that the battle might be over, but the war against the unknown was far from finished. The mask, the one Emily had knocked off the monster, was gone. It had vanished without a trace, leaving behind an unsettling void. The children exchanged worried glances, the implications of the missing mask weighing heavily on their minds. The sun continued its ascent, casting a warm glow on the town below. The light brought a sense of normalcy, a promise of a new beginning. Yet the memory of the night's events lingered, a stark reminder of the fragility of their safety. But the shadows of that night and the fear of what might still be lurking in the darkness would remain with them forever. The children knew that while they had won this battle, the presence of the unknown would always cast a shadow over their lives. They had found a glimmer of hope, but the journey was far from over.